This is our first look at the new Wilier Filante SLR. This is the ID2, the second generation. Behind me is the SL version of the first generation. Welcome back to Italy. We are down in the foothills of the Monte Grappa. We've just finished our trip to Wilier, and this is sort of my reflections and narrative. We couldn't really film when we're in the facility. We've got loads of B-roll to show you. So this is like my monologue. I'm gonna talk you through the whole process. This was a dealer trip. So we were invited out here as being a new sign-up Wilier dealer. We went out there to go and meet some of the key people, learn more about the history, how the manufacturing process worked, and the assembly. So where we were, this is their assembly plant where the design offices are. So we got to meet the designers, we got to meet the marketing team, and we got to meet the whole assembly plant as well. We got to see how the bikes come from the factory through paint, get assembled, and then eventually out to you guys. And I was really keen to see the actual quality control. So let's get into the video. Right, the factory's really quiet. I've just snuck into the frame preparation corner. This is the bit I really wanted to know about. So we have a milling machine here. I think they're using this for doing the brake mount surfaces and making sure that the inside of the brake mount is perfect. Here is, look at this, an actual bottom bracket, reamer and facer. So you can get the entire bike in there. And then this here is a seat post reamer. So if there is any paint in there, put the entire bike down onto this and make sure that the seat post is all reamed out perfectly. Everywhere across here is covered with various gauges, no-go gauges, thread gauges. They've really got everything they need here to make sure the frame is absolutely perfect. This makes me so happy. Wilier, if you know, they have SL, which is their sort of base spec, really competitively priced. That bike behind you, the frame only, including handlebars and seat post, is £3,000. They do the SLR version, higher modulus carbon, lighter, really nice paintwork, a few little attention to detail tweaks. So this then is the ID2 version of that. This stays in the range at a great point of getting an aero bike, but this is like their Tour de France competitor for 2026. Now, I haven't had a chance to ride it yet. I've only just had sort of the press release sort of rundown, and luckily they've given me some time just to really get into the nitty gritty on the details, and I've been examining this really closely. There's some stuff in here that I think is nice and stuff a bit like, I don't know. Obviously, they've improved the aerodynamics because of course they have, and some of it's really obvious. Significantly wider fork, deeper tubes here. They've done loads of work around styling around here, and these integrated bottle cages. Talking of which, these, you can actually get a normal 500ml water bottle in there, and you can get a normal 750 in there. So you don't have to use these aero bottles, all nicely sculptured around the front mech. That's nice. They've tidied up this area. Now, what they have done is added a SRAM UDH. Not a massive fan of this, as you know, on race bikes, because when you're trying to achieve a really narrow Q factor, this can potentially limit your stance width, because a lot of riders with bigger feet will hit that chainstays. What they've kind of done to counter that is they have kept with BB86 bottom bracket, which means that the chainstays can come right up close to the end of the crank here. So it does mean that this angle is somewhat reduced. It's not quite as steep. I don't think it's going to be as much of a problem as we see on some bikes where they've really got to aggressively angle the chainstays out to hit the wider axle of the UDH. Now, what they've also done, if you notice, down by this bottom bracket, this big black hole here. Now this is for the access for the Di2 battery, and this you can take straight off and get access to the Di2 battery straight away. You don't have to remove the bottom bracket to get to it. The reason I've had to do that is because they have significantly slimmed down the seat post. That is really narrow, but I've been giving this a proper good flex. Now, compared to a few that we've tried, SL8, Colnago, V5 RS, this probably feels the stiffest that I've come across. Haven't really sat on it and ridden it, but just giving it some beans here seems pretty good. A couple of other little things, like they've blanked off the end of the axle there. It's always a problem in case you're ham-fisted and you strip your axle. It's hard to do. You can get in there with a closed end tap, loads and loads of tyre clearance. And then they've taken some of the design cues from the Verticale. So this little Garmin mount, they've really tried to integrate that and make it look nice and smart. And of course, classic Wilier paint job. This looks pretty boring compared to some of the stuff that they've got in their range coming up. So yeah, all in all, I am kind of liking it. It's a really good evolution of a design I've really come to love. Now, you want to know some key stats. Well, before we get onto the price, I've just had to write this down. A lot of the aero testing they do at Silverstone, like most of the bike brands do, it seems to be the center of like bike testing these days. And they've done most of this testing at a high, but still realistic 290 watts and they've tried to measure the aero gain over 70k, so it feels more real world. But what they're saying is that with a rider, that results in a 1 minute 45 time reduction over a 70k with an average 290. It's still, I say, high level amateur as opposed to complete pie in the sky sort of professional sort of stats. That's okay. Interestingly, they have given us some CDA figures, and there's a whole table, but probably the highlight is with a bike and the rider and the bottles and the computer mount, everything you would need to do to go out on a ride, including a race number. Apparently the FDJ team was very keen on saying, I want to know what the total is. You know, when a rider actually sat on it, what are you achieving? So at 50 kilometers an hour at 0 degrees of yaw, they're achieving a CDA of 0.32. Not the most aerodynamic bike on the market, but I think it's very, very close. Now, the actual frame weight with all these additions is still 890 grams. So even with, you know, the elaborate paint, the much deeper fork, they're still achieving 890 grams for a size medium in black, fully painted with all the gubbins on as well. So I think that's pretty smart. Now, you want to know how expensive it is. Well, the frame set, as you see here, including handlebar, bottles, seat post, £5,500. So it puts it right up there. There really aren't a lot of mainstream premium brands at that price. There's probably only sort of Pinarello, Colnago, Y1RS. So we're sort of competing at that sort of level. So there we go. What do you guys think? I'm keen to ride this. Apparently we're going to be getting a demo bike in relatively soon that you guys can actually come and ride, but that's a few weeks away yet. This is just our very first look. So tell me, what do you think? Part of those presentations, I got a really good conversation with Claudio, the legend that is their designer, and I do mean legend. He's really famous in the industry. He's been doing it for absolutely decades, and he was there to sort of introduce a couple of new models which we can't talk about just yet, but really establish the entire design philosophy that drives the Wilier brand. We got to talk about aero and layups and weights and durability testing and how the pro teams influence that and how they get all the feedback from the dealers to actually influence the design, and that was really, really fascinating. Claudio really knows his stuff. I could have talked to him for days. One of the really interesting things he was talking about was they go over to Silverstone to do their aero testing, and he was a little bit dismissive of some of the aero testing that gets done, because in practice he realizes that on any given day the variance in testing can be up to 10%. So that means if they were testing something in the morning, by the time they come back after lunch, the aero testing results can be completely out. So for his mind, when he was testing, he was always testing against a control as close as he possibly could to testing the thing he was trying to evaluate. He could only ever really work on the data to say that the thing that we're trying is better or worse than the control at that time. And that was really interesting to me. And as he went through that process, he said at some point you have to stop and put something into production, because you go around in a circle where you improve one thing but make something worse in another area. And if you just kept going on that loop, you'd never ever get anything made. And so you think it's just a constant evolution of just things changing and developing and getting better. But at some point you have to go, brilliant, we've made really good progress, let's get that into production. That was a really fascinating conversation. Just managed to pull a fresh one off the rack. They probably don't have this at the media camp for the launch, but the inside is super clean. I think they're using the new latex molds that we've had on the channel before. Had a light down here and had a really good feel, and it is as clean as any other modern frame coming out of factories are now, so they're definitely up their production. Frame feel is about the same weight, which makes sense because it is. The seat post you can see here, lovely and clean. There's got a little cutout section here that they're going to use the seat post wedge, really super slim. And then you can see here where they've got the Di2 access hatch, so that's actually a little plastic insert, and there's actually enough space here so the Di2 battery can sit here, so you don't have to remove the bottom bracket to access it. It's just a straight pull in and pull out design. Very impressed. This hasn't been prepared yet, so I'm told that it now goes for final preparation, because a tiny little bit of paint overspray, which we don't normally see by the time they get to us. And they do actually put a layer of clear coat over the face, which sometimes we just have to take off a little bit, but apparently they've improved that situation as well. But you still got to put the chain protectors on here. The front mech still needs to go on. Sort of this is fresh from paint. Very impressive actually. That sort of evolved into talking about how they work their layups and that's a secret sauce. They weren't going to divulge much of that, apart from the fact that he drew on his experience of working with Mark Cavendish, the best sprinter in the world, and how they kept trying to make a bike stiffer and stiffer and stiffer, and there was a point where Mark gave the bike back and said, no, I want to go back to this one, this is too stiff. And after that, they've used that feedback from the teams to work out exactly what it is that they want, and what they ultimately want was something really durable and dependable that will get them to the end of the race. When they delivered something that was really out there, really lightweight, the teams didn't like it, the mechanics didn't like it, they just didn't feel like they had the confidence to really go fast and race day after day after day. So they found a compromise where they think they're delivering good, dependable durability and everything is light enough. We were talking about the Chinese frames a little bit and said it's easy to make a really lightweight frame that will pass the ISO and the UCI tests. That's an easy thing to do. What's harder to do is then tell your customers that you can give a good warranty on that and tell all your dealers that you can depend on this product. And so they were always trying to find a compromise between what they felt was a really good high quality product that was light enough for its intended use. And that is apparently something that gets talked about constantly. I wish I could have gone deeper in that conversation with that. It would have been really fascinating. So, and finally, after all that was done, we got a chance to go onto the assembly line. Now, by the time we'd done all those presentations, the assembly line is sort of broken up for the day. There's a colleague there that was retiring. They threw this massive party for us, so I didn't get a chance to speak to people on the assembly line. I only got a chance to look at their workbenches. What was really fascinating, and I really want to come back to in a future video, hopefully, is that we saw the frames come directly from the paint facility, and they were like paint over spray, and then we got to the point where those frames had been picked, ready to go out to a customer order and then be assembled. And in between that time, something had happened, and we got to have a look at the guy's workbench, and you'll see here there's various milling machines. Now, the guys at Wilier promised me that we can come back and spend a bit more time on this guy's workbench. I think it'll be fascinating to see how they do really high quality frame preparation on a massive scale. There's some tools there that are absolutely fascinating to see. For me, it was just really comforting to see that someone and a particular part of that workshop was dedicated to making sure that frame was perfect before it went onto the assembly line. And just around the corner from that was actually the master mechanic station, and he had all manner of tools in there. He knew everything intimately, and he would be the one that modified the prototypes to make everything fit and then feed back into the design office. There's some really fascinating people there, and I really hope we get the chance to speak to them in a future video. If that's something you want to see, please get down in the comments and let Wilier know. They're going to be watching this video. This is definitely an exploratory thing for them. They're used to doing this sort of heavily marketed thing, and for getting involved in a YouTube channel like us, which is quite genuine and want to speak to real people, I think they'll be really comforted by your comments and helping them sort of say, yeah, come on, let's actually talk about more of the things that we do. That's definitely what interests me. And with all that in mind, I just want to extend a massive thank you to the generosity and hospitality for everyone at Wilier and Mike over these last couple of days. It's been fascinating to see everything. I feel really honoured to be invited as a relatively small YouTube channel who sort of tells quite genuine stories into these brands, because ultimately someone's made a decision that they want to get that story out to you guys and start expressing the real people behind the brand. I hope you loved this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you on the next one.